is Doug DeMuro, and today I'm going to tell you the story about how I was once the king of car spotting. Yes, that's right, I was once the car spotter guy. There's a long story to it, not that long, but I'll tell it to you today, my history in car spotting. Today's video is sponsored by Cars and Bids, which is my online car auction website for modern enthusiast cars. So far, Cars and Bids has hosted more than 20,000 auctions of special, cool, exciting cars like this, and this, and this, and this. So, if you're looking to sell your enthusiast car, reach a wide audience at carsandbids.com. Okay, so I've talked about this a little bit before in videos, my car spotting history, and I even did a video where I talked through my top car spotting moments. But today I'm going to talk about kind of how it all started and how I became sort of like the car spotter for a short time on the internet in like the early 2010s. So let's get started. Here's how it happened. It was 2005, 20 years ago, and I was 16 or 15 or whatever, and I was driving along in Colorado where I lived. And I saw a Carrera GT. And I remember I went back and told the few friends that I had in high school that were interested in cars, and I saw Carrera GT. And it was Denver, Colorado, before Denver blew up. And nobody believed me. I mean, the concept of seeing a Carrera GT in Denver was like laughable. And I was like, I'm going to prove these guys wrong. I'm going to get a digital camera and I'll see it again, and I'll get a digital camera, and I'll take pictures of it, and then I'll prove to everybody that I saw it, like all my high school friends who doubted me. That's how this all got started. That was like early 2005, February of 2005, I saw a silver Carrera GT and started bringing this clunky digital camera everywhere I went. And after that, it just sort of started to grow. A few months later, I saw a different Carrera GT, again, a yellow Carrera GT, which sort of started to spur my real enthusiasm for that car. And I took a zillion pictures and then was able to prove to everybody, yes, I did see a Carrera GT. And it wasn't too long after that that I saw that same silver one again, and then was again able to, hey, no, really, I did see the silver ones out there too. And then it was just kind of this bug that bit me. Like I really, really enjoyed car spotting. And there were some secrets that kind of contributed to my success at doing this hobby. For one thing, this was right around the time that Denver started to get really hot as like a city. When I was a kid growing up in Denver, we did not have a Lamborghini dealership, a Rolls-Royce dealership, an Aston Martin dealership. None of that existed. And it was always like I remember one time I saw a Phantom, and it was like, holy crap, who would have that here, and how do you even service it? Like, it's insane. And there was a Ferrari dealer, but it was really low volume. It also had Maserati, Bentley, and Lotus in one tiny building. But right around that time, Denver kind of started to get hot as a city, and like a lot of people started to move there. It was cool. It was like a fun place people wanted to be, which was so crazy as a kid growing up there, seeing what happened to Denver. It's like, what, this place? I don't understand. It was just like my childhood. It was just like, it was kind of a joke of a place until maybe the mid to late 2000s when my car spotting hobby started to take off. Well, then I moved to Atlanta to go to college. I went to Emory for college in Atlanta, and that was an especially special time to be in Atlanta because there was an amazing confluence of things. Number one, it was right pre-recession. So like money was cheap, and there was a lot of people wanted to spend money to be flashy and buckhead in Atlanta. And then the other big thing that was going on was it was a time where a lot of special cars were coming out. I mean, I still think that the 2003 to 2008 era was probably the greatest era of the car world in the modern times, in my lifetime. You had Lamborghini come out with the Gallardo, their first, entry-level car in a long time. The Murcielago had just come out. You had Ferrari come out with the Enzo, and in fact, there was the arms race with the big manufacturers, the SLR, the Enzo, and the Carrera GT all at that time. The Ford GT had just come out. And even in regular cars, like the Audi RS4 was coming to the US for the first time. The Dodge SRT cars were just coming out. Like, there was a ton of stuff going on. BMW was putting a V10 in the M5. The Super America is coming out. I mean, there was, every brand was doing like crazy stuff in the mid-2000s. It was so cool to see. That was a special time to be in Atlanta car spotting. I remember we saw Murcielagos, and we saw Gallardo Spiders, and we saw everything. I mean, I would say Countach is driving around at that time. It was, the newest Countaches were only 16, 17 years old, so you occasionally would see them on the road. And the recession hit and things kind of changed a little bit, especially in Atlanta for a while. But I was just kind of becoming obsessed with the car spotting thing at that time. And I really enjoyed like the casino effect of it. Like when you would go to the hot places, the other big thing was malls were still hot then. So you could see reliably like some of the coolest cars on the planet at shopping malls back then in the valet areas. And so it was cool to like the casino effect, like you'd go and see like, oh, will there be a special car here today? Like if I drive around, what will I see today? And especially in Atlanta at that time, you never really knew what you would see. I saw a Maserati MC12 at one point. You'd see a Murcielago Roadster. There was all sorts of really crazy stuff. SLRs were driving around. It was really special. And so there was like a fun casino effect, and I really became obsessed. And so in 2009, I wrote a letter to Automobile Magazine, which at the time was one of the big 4 car magazines: Road and Track, Car and Driver, Motor Trend, and Automobile. And I wrote a letter and said, the Automobile always covered more like experiential lifestyle kind of content instead of like just traditional car reviews. And I always found Automobile more appealing as a result. I wrote a letter and said, hey, I do this thing called car spotting in Atlanta. You should come do a story on me. I just thought it might be interesting for the reader. And they called me back and they said, hey, yeah, we'll do a story. So they sent this guy named Preston Lerner, who was one of Automobile's writers, and he mostly did like profiles of interesting people, like guys who do dirt track racing or guys who are rebuilding, 20s cars or whatever it was. And he came to Atlanta and sat with me in my Audi A4 that I used to drive around Buckhead looking for cars. He sat with me for like a weekend, and we did that. And he just kind of, a photographer came as well. And the 3 of us rode around, and the photographer took pictures while I was taking pictures. And then, Preston was asking me questions and just kind of talking through the thing and thinking in his mind what he was going to write. And for the July 2009 issue of Automobile Magazine, I was featured as like the car spotter. Like, check out what it's like to be a car spotter, like driving around looking for the best. The theme of that issue of the magazine was like dream big. And I remember the Lamborghini Murcielago SV was on the cover. It had just come out, and that was like part of the issue. And there was a bunch of stories about like big dreams. And one of them was, the car spotter dreams about having these cool cars. And so that was like a huge deal. And after that, I became kind of recognized on like a lot of car forums as like this guy in Atlanta is in this magazine, and he's got seen all these cars around Atlanta. It's so cool. And there were some very special car sightings that I had that were particularly distinctive. In July of 2007 in Colorado, I saw Ralph Lauren driving his Veyron, and that was when they had just come out. And I got pictures of him near Telluride, where he has like a big property, driving along in the Veyron. And that was like a viral story on the internet at that time. Like, Ralph Lauren, guy chases down Ralph Lauren driving Veyron. It was like a big deal. And I saw Maserati MC12 driving around, like I mentioned, and various other really, really special cars. And at one point, I even went to Monaco as part of a trip to Europe and saw obviously the crazy, crazy stuff that's there. Lamborghini Diablo SE30 and LM002. And I mean, it's amazing to go into a wealthy area of a new place and see cars, you've never could imagine. In your place, you usually are aware of what's around, and then you go somewhere else and anything's on the table. And that's especially true in places like Monaco. So after the Automobile Magazine article came out, I realized I had this like following of car spotters. And so I created this website called chasingexotics.com. And this is probably 2011, 2010. And I started this website. It was like a V-Bulletin web forum that was organized by location, like Asia, the southeastern US, Western Europe, the UK, Southern Europe, whatever. And people could post pictures of cars they saw. Now, this was all before Instagram. Like now, Instagram is kind of a place where car spotters go and congregate. But back in the day, chasingexotics.com became quite a popular website for car spotters to come from all over the place and congregate and share their car pictures from their local car spotting communities. And I had started that website because I was like car spotter guy, like that was my thing. So I had been in the magazine about this. I had gone to Monaco to see the cars. I had created the website. I was like Mr. Car Spotter. And that was really, really a special thing for me for a long time. And a couple of things kind of killed it in the end. One was I graduated from college and got a job. Like I spent a lot of time in college doing this because I didn't really enjoy school. There was no reason to be in school when I could be car spotting. And so I didn't really spend a lot of time paying that much attention in school, but I really did focus on the car spotting like it was a job. But then I got a real job. Work always interested me a lot more than school did. And once that happened, the concept of car spotting kind of went away to an extent. And then also I just started to get cool cars. My first job out of college was I worked for Porsche's corporate office. And so I had a 911 company car. And my company car payment was most of my salary, but it was so cool, I couldn't stop myself. And so I drove around in that 911, and it seemed weird to be like car spotting from a Porsche 911. And eventually kind of the cars ratcheted up from there, and I just lost the car spotting bug. And the other thing that happened was once smartphones came to exist, and I could stop carrying the digital camera everywhere. Once smartphones came to exist, car spotting went global, and I became like a very small fish in the car spotting world. And I'm now not a part of it at all. But in the days where it was just digital cameras and forums, like there weren't that many of us. And I remember when I was younger and I went to Monaco for the first time in 2010, I was the only guy when an F40 would drive by running after it with my camera. I was the only person. And now if you go to Monaco, it's almost hard to like exist as a non-car spotter. There are so many kids running around with like high quality cameras as fast as they can, you know, and they're talking to each other. They have like radios or phones. They're like, oh, there's a Veyron over at whatever place, and they all run as fast as they can there, like 20 kids in a throng, or an F50 drives by and it's being trailed by like 30 car spotter kids. And that's kind of life in like Monaco or in certain areas of London, like Kensington. And it in the end, that kind of, Once it went global, there became hundreds of people doing it. It's not quite as, like, it was cool when I didn't know what I would see, right? But now you can go, there's all sorts of exotics spotted in Switzerland or Munich or Monaco or whatever, and you can see kind of what's being around. You don't really have to even go there yourself. Not that I didn't enjoy always being in the presence of those cars, but the point is, it got big. The hobby got big. Instagram blew it up too. Facebook, people could start sharing their car spottings a lot more commonly. And so in the end, it just sort of, the time in my life and the time in car spotting, you know, it was declining in my life. Car spotting became popular generally, and it just sort of moved on. But that was the thing, the big part of my life, at least 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's like what I did. And I really had like the internet hub for car spotting on my Chasing Exotics website. And it's still fun. Like to this day, I enjoy, if I'm somewhere, I see a special car, I take a picture, I send it to my friends, etc. I don't really catalog my sightings like I used to, but I have absolutely no qualms about like going up to cars, taking pictures, thinking some cars are really special. Even now, if I'm walking around somewhere, I was in London with my wife a couple years ago, and an Audi RS2 drove by before I had mine, and I freaked out, and we took pictures of me next to it, and like I still get to that level, even though I have very special cars myself. You still get really excited when you see special cars, or at least I do. Maybe not quite to the level I used to, where I would stay up late making little spreadsheets of all the ones I had seen. But it's still cool, and I still think back about those days and enjoy it. And it was a really great time in my life when I was the king of car spotting.